Unit 4, Case Study, Flight Information Report Summary. In this case study, your assignment is to modify the flight report created earlier so that it shows the airline code, the number of the flight date, and at the end you have to show a total amount of bookings, the total occupied seats, and the total free seats. All of that information is in the previously created flight report in the second case study. Then you have to create a structure for the report fields to use in your program. You have to make it possible to filter by airline code and flight number. And you have to attach a search help to the input fields filter. So we're going to modify the program previously we created, the cflight_report program, and we're going to create a structure with the airline code, the flight number, the flight date, and other required fields. At the end of the report, we're going to show the total booking for the airline selected, the total occupied seats in business class, and the total free seats in business class. So let's navigate to our report. So we look it up in the Object Navigator. We have our report in the package zFlight. If you remember, we press enter and the list of objects are displayed. So we navigate to our program. It was the zFlight report. So as you can remember, this simple program, if we execute it, it just prints to the screen some information. So we're going to modify this information to present the airline code, the number of the flight date, and these totals. So let's go back and let's press the display change icon. The system is asking us for a new task to be created in our flight information report workbench request. So we're going to say that it's okay. If you are not presented with this screen, and if you are presented with the other screen to choose, you can choose the ABAP training course request, or you can choose this request if you didn't release it in the earlier courses. So let's continue. So now let's comment this program so we can just use it as a reference, and let's start modifying it. So let's declare some variables. So we're going to declare a local structure to manage our data type, and we're going to use a structure from the ABAP dictionary. We're going to name it ZST flight report. This structure doesn't exist, so we double click to create it. The program asks us if we want to create it. We click yes. So now we have this structure and we want to create it, but we can't double click, because if we double click, then the system thinks we're creating a global type, and this is not the case. We want to create a structure in the ABAP dictionary. So we're going to save and we're going to navigate to the ABAP dictionary. So let's go back, and we go to transaction SE11, and we create the CST_flight_report data type. We select data type and we click create. We select structure and we click create. So now This is going to be our flight report structure. So now in our structure, let's start creating the components we need. So let's name the component with some familiar names we already used. So for example, for our airline ID, we're going to use the component car ID. If we use the same name that the other tables have, we can use the move corresponding ABAP statements to move data from other tables to our structure. So that's why it is better sometimes to use as a component name the same name of your transparent table fields. So for the airline ID, let's use the name that the system uses, the car ID. And the component type, let's use also the data element car ID from the system. We press enter and this is the airline code. Let's add also the con ID. This is the flight number. So we also use the data element that is previously created in the system. Let's also include the date. Remember, it was one of the requirements to include the date. So we use the sDate data element. Then we use the field payment sum. This component is the total of current bookings. So we also need this information to add up and give a grand total. Let's specify a currency for this payment sum. So let's use the component currency and the data element s_cur code. Let's specify another component for the maximum seats available. So we use the data element sSeatsMax. I'm extracting all these data elements from the sFlight table. If you remember, in our program we were making a select to the sFlight table. So if you double click that table and you take a look at its fields, you're going to find all of these data elements. I also add this maximum number of seats in business class _B. That's the same name that it is in the sFlight transparent table. And I use the data element S maximum capacity in business class. And I use the field seats occupied of business class, and I use the data element SCO business occupied seats in business class. Now remember that for quantity or currency fields we always have to specify a unit. So we're going to specify a reference table, the same structure, and the field currency. Now we activate our structure. We save in our package. Let's use the package cFlight because that's where our program is. So to keep all the objects in the same package, let's use the cFlight package and we save. Warnings, yes, let's display everything is okay. So we go back and our structure is active. So now I can use my structure in my program and I can reference to these components. So I go back and let's navigate back to the program. So you can see now my structure is created, and if I double click I can see my recently created structure and it's in my package cFlight. So let's navigate to our program. we click on change edit and we can keep on typing. So now let's declare a structure from the same data structure of the ABAP dictionary. Now let's declare a variable, local variable, for the total bookings that we're asked for, and that is going to be type the dictionary structure hyphen, remember the component for the structure was the payment sum for the total booking. So the same type that it is used in this component, it is going to be used for my local variable. Let's also declare the total occupied seats variable, type the same structure hyphen, if you remember it was called seats OCC underscore B. You can always double click your structure if you don't remember the names to navigate back, and then you can navigate back to the program using the blue arrows or using the back on the top. And let's declare another variable for the total free seats, type let's make this the same type as the occupied seats. It doesn't matter, it's just the type that we want to use. And let's declare another variable for the maximum seats available, type seats max, the same type in business class. So now let's use the parameters. The first parameter we're going to ask is the airline code. We're going to use this parameter to filter our information, and so that way we can only display information for the selected airline code. So we're going to ask the user for a parameter or an input. So that parameter is going to be type the structure dash the car ID component. And we also need to know the flight number. So we're going also to ask the flight number to the user dash con ID. Now, after asking the input to the user, and when he executes the program, first we're going to print the titles of the columns so we can know what we are referring to. So for example, we're going to write, for example, airline code to the screen, and then we can display all the information of the airline code below. The flight number, the flight date, the bookings amount, the occupied seats, and the maximum seats. So that's the first thing we're going to print in the screen are the titles. So just to remember, I'm going to comment here titles. Now, as you remember, then we had a select. So we're going to use the same select. Remember, we're going to view the Open SQL for ABAP, the select statements later on the course for Open SQL. For right now, let's just write select from our table and let's use the into corresponding fields of, so everything that corresponds with the same name from the table is going to go into our structure. Let's save our program and let's use the pretty printer to make it look better. Now, remember we have a select and select. Let's just copy that exactly the same. Then I'm going to talk more about the select loop. But for now, it's enough to know that this is a loop. The select and the end select is a loop. So this is going to be executed the number of times the query is executed. Inside, I'm going to filter my information using my parameters. So if my current record that I selected equals if the airline code of that record equals my parameter and my current flight number equals my parameter for my flight number, then I'm going to process that record. So I'm going to write a new line, and then I'm going to write the car ID first, because we're going to keep this same order, then the con ID, the date, the bookings amount, that is the payment sum field, the seats occupied in business class, and the seats maximum of business class. That is what I'm going to write to the screen. Then for each record I'm going to add the payment sum to my variable of the payment sum, total booking, and the result is going to be stored in this variable. So for every select loop I'm going to be storing my total result in this variable. I also want to add the occupied seats, so I can subtract it from the maximum seats and I can obtain my total free seats. So if you recall, my occupied seats was this variable, so I'm going to add it to the occupied variable. And then I'm going to store or move my number of maximum seats for this flight number to the max seats. After that, when the loop is done, the end select loop is done processing, I'm going to calculate the total number of available free seats. That will be the maximum seats minus the total occupied seats. So now I have my total free seats stored in this variable. Then I'm going to start writing to the screen my results. So I write, and I'm going to use a new line inside the right. The new line inside the right is represented with a backslash. So I'm going to write total bookings amount. And I write my variable for a total booking. Then I write the total maximum seats for this flight, 2 points, and I write the max seats. A new line. Then I write the total occupied seats for business class, and I write total occupied variable seats. And finally, I write the total free seats in business class. I already calculate that number, so I just print it to the screen. Now my program looks done now, so I'm going to save, check my syntax, everything is okay, and I activate my program. Now let's run our program and see the result. As you can see, it's asking for a car ID and a con ID. Let's rename this parameter. So let's go back, go to text elements, text symbols, selection test, and this is going to be the airline code, and this is going to be the flight number. We activate our text element and we go back and we run one more time. Now it's better. We have our airline code and our flight number. We forgot to associate our created search help to our airline code, so we can't see the input help. So let's go back. Let's go back to our structure. We can now double click our structure. It's gonna take us there, and inside the structure we can assign our search help. So we click entry help check, and for the car ID we already have a dictionary search help. It is a standard, but we want to use our created search help, so we place ourselves here and we click on search help. No, I'm sorry, let's place ourselves here and then let's click on search help. First we have to edit, and now we write the name of our search help. Remember, it's called airline codes. So I associate that, yes, I click copy, and now my search help is transferred to my car ID. So every program that I write and that I use this structure and this component type, that program is always going to show this search help. So we activate, we go back to our program, we run, and now we can see our search help. So for example, let's select the American Airlines carrier, and we have to input a flight number. You can see the available flight numbers in the table, but I remember one, for example, is 17, and I execute, and I can see the totals. I can see my information, the total bookings amount, and we can see the grand total added. The total maximum seat for this flight is 385, the total occupied seats is 283, and the total free seats is 102. For example, if we wanted to see another flight number, for example flight number 64 for the same airline, I execute, and now I can see different amount. This is flight 64. We have 84 free seats in business class. This is really useful for a manager that is taking decisions and want to see the total free seats of an airline or of a flight.